Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the League of Inches podcast, finals week 2 review. So, obviously, talking about the two big games that we had on the weekend. Myself and Trav again, like last week, we had a lot of good, positive feedback from our review show last week, actually. So, brought it back. We'll probably do it for the rest of the final series, which is obviously hugely important games with teams getting eliminated, teams advancing, and the like. So, we are ready to attack it all once again. I have to address the elephant in the room for those watching on YouTube. Trav's forgotten what code we represent. I'm gonna give. I don't know why I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna give him about 10 seconds to just spruik what he's wearing for the podcast listeners and just gloat.
Go Swannies, eh? Massive Swans fan. I'm a Swans member. Let's go. We made the granny. Big game on Friday night. Which actually in turn made me have to watch the replay of the Friday night Sharks Cowboys game, which was a bit disappointing after I watched that game because God, that was ugly. But let's go Swannies. Granny on Saturday.
Good luck to the Swannies. There you go. I've said it. So well done. And that's all we're going to talk about for that code today. The Sharkies, too good for the Cowboys, 26 points to 18. Very poor crowd. I think I'll start off by saying that. I know the AFL was on at the same time. I don't think that was really an excuse, to be honest with you. I just think it was a poor crowd from obviously an out-of-state crowd. And then the Sharkies fans who just do not travel. They don't even travel around Sydney. It's actually a bit embarrassing, to be honest. Like, to be brutally honest with your fans out there, I don't know what you're doing. Like, because the finals game, you had this hoodoo you needed to get rid of, which congratulations on your team for doing it. We will discuss that. But sorry to start this on a negative, but it had to be spoken about because it was just so – I was embarrassed. And I'm not even a fan. I was embarrassed for the game, like to get that in a finals game. It was just not good. Trav, thoughts on this one?
I agree. I think it's really disappointing. I think it's telling for the NRL, and I think the NRL kind of needs to wake up a little bit to it in terms of how they do their fixtures and what they do. You can't help that it was the Cowboys. It's a long way for the Cowboys to go. It is what it is. Cowboys still had some decent showing there for an away final game, though. So I wouldn't be disappointed for that. And you kind of expect that. But if you want to do, like, you want to compare it, I know you're not comparing apples with apples, but if you want to compare it to the AFL, Port Adelaide had a lot of people travel, and Adelaide to Sydney is much easier to do. It's not as far, but there was a lot of Port Adelaide fans at the AFL. Yet it didn't happen in the NRL. And then, as you said, it quite rightly, that should have been a packed house of Sharks people, and it wasn't, and that's really disappointing. And I think that's embarrassing for both clubs and for the league.
100%. And I'm not going at Cowboys fans at all. I understand, and I actually credit them for turning up the way they did and the numbers that they did. I know that airfares were just ridiculous, and obviously with the day and age that we live in, I don't know how they keep getting away with that, the airlines, but they do. So that's that. But yeah, Sharkies fans, honestly, pull your heads in a bit, I think, and actually go out and support your team because the game's expanding, and that sort of that turnout, I just think is horrible. But anyway, on to the games itself, and I guess the real big point to start off with, and it was a weird game because the Cowboys for mine started so well, and I thought they were on the front foot massively, and I was just waiting for them to score. I thought, oh, hang on here, this could be a quick like 10-0 scoreline after 10, 15 minutes to the Cowboys, and I don't know how the Sharks is going to overcome this with obviously all the media build up, and then they just sort of that the penalty try, which we'll talk about now, Ruben Cotter's effort on Braden Trindle. I guess the first point is, do you think, Trav, that it was a penalty try? Was it a fair ruling?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not arguing with that. I think it's a pretty fair ruling. I think he was in front. I think the ball held up. I don't think they were too far. I don't think they were far enough away. I don't think the players were close enough either. And if you have a look at the players, that you got to judge it by the speed of what the players are. There's so many. The thing is, what's hard about this is there's so many variables within that rule of being able to put the penalty try across or not. But I like it, and as I've read, a lot of people are saying, the Cowboys would much rather. I think the Cowboys rather the penalty try than the sin bin for 10 minutes. So
100%. And
I think, and that's that. I agree with all the things that most of the people have been saying that I've read about that. Is that, I think they agree that it was a better penalty for them in the end, anyways. But and I agree. And then to touch back a little bit further, I agree with you. I thought the start of that game, watching that in the replay, and obviously when you're watching it with a replay, you're not watching it live. You lose a little bit of the ambience in it, and the take on it. And I already knew the results, but watching that and the way that they started, geez, they were direct. They were penetrating through the middle. It was just man on man. It was It was just a silly error, a Ruben Cotter silly error that literally changed the game at the click of their fingers and resulted in this penalty try.
100%. For mine, like, I know there's people out there still questioning the penalty try, and if it was, I think it was one of the most clear-cut penalty tries we've ever seen. Apart from probably the Storm Dragons one, which we're going way back for that one. Everyone knows already seen that one and knows about it, but I thought that I had no doubt in my mind. I don't know how many people have sort of said that there was. I didn't think Dearden was there. Like there's a back shot. If they get to see that on Fox Sports, the back shot, he's hitting that at speed. Trinder, he's already grubbed it. The ball sits up perfectly after the first bounce of him just to dive, grab it, score. Dearden's not going to get there. He needed an extra probably 2 steps, I reckon, to get there at the time that Trinder would have got there. It's a penalty try. I don't need to sort of debate that anymore. I think we're both in agreement. It was a very clear cut. What was funny, the aftermath of that, because as you said, I thought that would have been the decision where the Cowboys gone behind the post and go, you know what? We've got away with one there. If we lose Cotter for 10 minutes, we're really in trouble. And unfortunately, what happened was they were in really big trouble anyway. It was just straight away that next set, straight down the middle. See you later. Sharks score straight away. It was bang, bang. And then they scored bang again shortly after. It was just, I could not believe what I was seeing after watching that first initial 10, 15-minute period to see what then had the outcome. I was in shock. I obviously tipped the Cowboys, so I wanted the Cowboys to win in that side of it. But then I was thinking, this story for the storyline, the Sharkies to overcome that initial first instance of that game, credit to them that they've really swallowed all that up and said, you know what, you've hit us with what you've got. Now let's have a go. And credit to the Sharkies forwards because I thought a few of them really stood up. I thought Toby Rudolph was very, very good, probably his best game of the year by a mile. He's been obviously injured a lot and coming off the bench. And Cam McInnes I thought was huge as well.
Yeah, I don't. So it's funny, we're on a podcast to talk footy and analyze this, and I don't have a different opinion at all. Every part of and we haven't spoken about this. We didn't set an agenda for this podcast. The agenda was let's review both of the games, and that was as far as we spoke. Unfortunately for the listeners, I don't disagree with you at all. That's boring, but I agree with literally every part of what you said. I don't think Dearden was anywhere near of it for the penalty try. What I want to look at, before I say that, I think the ball, every variable within that penalty try looked to me like it was going to be a try anyways. So to me, that's a no-brainer that has to be done as a try. I really think that Cotter should have been binned for it. But they obviously decided the consequence was the try. And as you said, I think the Cowboys should have literally sat behind the goal line and said, guys, we got away with this. We better pull our finger out here. We're still on this. And it didn't happen. And that they literally shit the bed and off we went. Like it was unbelievable what had happened. But it was just, to me, the penalty try was more of a penalty try because of what Cotter did. I think you've just got to look at the actual incident in terms of what the ramifications of, or how the concertinas went to call the try afterwards. What Cotter did was just dumb. Like it was just un-Cotter-like. Cotter is not that type of person. I don't think I've ever seen Cotter maybe correct me if I'm wrong, and Cowboys fans will watch a lot more of it than me, but I rate Cotter so highly, and I've never seen him do anything stupid like that. That was just plain stupid. And it literally turned the game. And what I think is disappointing is that the headlines are looking at, and like I read the headlines the next day as I was watching the replay before I started, and it was talking about the penalty try. The headline was penalty try loses the game for the Cowboys, and that's rubbish. That's rubbish. The penalty try didn't lose the game for the Cowboys. The Cowboys lost the game because they were rubbish, and the Sharks ran all over them for a large majority of that game.
They just had a patch, the Cowboys, and it's been their Achilles heel all year. And it's why we've both said a number of times, I think, on these podcasts that we just never got the Cowboys. And I guess in the end we will prove correct. But it was just so hard to always go, you know what? Yep, they're contenders this year. That just something in them, and it was this. It was that 20-minute period that they had in a do or die final. I don't get, like, their second half was really good. Like, that's the thing that was so head scratching for me. Like, Todd Payton would be sitting there going, "We showed that we can do it." Val Holmes was huge. Ruben Cotter, yes, he had that dumb moment, but I thought overall his game was huge.
Yeah,
he was very, very good.
Yep.
Both halves had some really good on the line defense moments where they saved tries. They got their team back onto that momentum side of things. But it was such a crucial 20 or 25-minute period for the Cowboys.
Oh, they ended up 24-0 down.
Yeah.
I will disagree with you slightly here. That I don't think the Cowboys were all that good in the second half. I think what happened was the Cowboys had just had moments of superstar players that got them back. Like Val Holmes was like, he was good, but I think it was only back on the back of 3 or 4 really good plays as to what that's why Val Holmes is paid the way he is, because he's freaking good. Like, I don't think the Cowboys played all that good. It was just that they relied on that star power. And I think that's the answer to the point that you just made about, and why you and I've been thinking about this the last few days since watching the replay of why we've questioned the Cowboys. We just didn't get it. But what it was the fact that across their team list, they've got stars. So, and those stars is what wins them these games in moments. And their defense is atrocious, and they have to rely on, and I'll talk some stats in a minute about that, about my thoughts on the defense, because whilst they had some good goal line defense and protection there, I agree with you. Their actual defense, I thought, was atrocious for that entire game, other than the first part of that 15 minutes when it was literally go to go, beast on beast. Here we go. But yeah, like they just literally rely on Dearden to make big plays. Like they've relied on Felt this year to do some big things in a year that he's basically retiring from the NRL. We're retiring from rugby league. Well, he's gone to England. Sorry, my bad. Relying on Val Holmes to be a superstar, which he is and has been in moments. Relying on Robson to make plays as a hooker that he's really not, but he's having to do that. Like, it's relying on these guys to do these superstar things that gets them into these games. And that's what I think what happened in the second half, because I think their defense and the way they were playing was poor. And I have to ask serious questions of Todd Payton. And I think the question, and the media and everyone's been asking, but yeah, the way that they've played this year, I don't see any glimpses of getting any better in the future.
Just a final thing on the Cowboys, because I think we've naturally just gone to the Cowboys straight away. I want to talk about a moment, and this was the first half, I'm pretty sure, towards just after I think the Sharks had scored at least 2 of their tries, and they're trying to come back a little bit. Drinky threw a cutout pass to the winger that was a shocker. First of all, Drinky's performance, I thought, was one of his worst for a long time. I sort of think the occasion got to him, to be brutally honest. I just think the occasion has got to him. Not going to say he's not a good player. I think he's got some remarkable talents and he's proved the sort of player he is, but a big moment, he just didn't seem to do it. Overplayed his hand a lot. But Cotter went over to him after that and tried to give him a little captain sort of tap on the shoulder, grab him and go, you know what, mate, just like, let's get your head back. Do as the captain would do. Let's go again. And he didn't just sort of go, oh yeah, whatever. He sort of like, mate, get away from me type thing. And I looked at it straight. I know there's been headlines about it since, but when I first seen it, I was like, oh, hang on, that's a bit more intense than I actually have seen by teams and stuff. And it naturally made me feel, because I'm a Parramatta fan, if that was Mitchell, Moses, or Gutho, our fans would have been over the hill about, oh, how dare they, blah, blah, blah. What were your thoughts around that moment? That was a big one.
I did see
It was a
that.
strange one.
Yeah, I did see that. It was strange. I think it's disappointing, and it really showed the mind frame of where Drinkwater was at, because he just wasn't there. I mean, I wrote in my notes here, like Drinkwater just wasn't focused. He had no idea where he was at any time, and it just seemed like he wasn't focused. And then that happened, and then Cotter came over to literally pat him on the ass and say, "Come on now, we're good, we're good, we're good." And I feel like he turned around and just told him, and had a massive go at him without trying to swear online. That was disappointing, and I think it's really showed the mind frame of where he's at. I think what that also shows is that the Cowboys had run their roost, but that they'd run their line. That was it. They got it. They got to this elimination final. That was sort of overachieving for basically what had happened for the year, or for a large part of the year. And I think that was sort of telling, in my opinion, from watching that.
Yeah, no, 100%. On the Sharkies, I want to talk about the halves. And I guess that was a huge talking point coming into the game. We had our own chats about that last week, and I guess in other weeks gone by, about mainly Nico. First of all, I want to speak about Trindle, though. That was one of the great finals performances by a half, and I don't think I'm over exaggerating. And I no mistake about it, he was the halfback. Nico was the 6 on the weekend. That was so clear it wasn't funny. And that's the way they should be playing, in my opinion, to get the best out of this team. Trindle, he stuffed up throughout the season. There's no doubt about that. We can all agree on that. But he doesn't play on the weekend. Sharkies don't win, in my opinion. He was that good, and that was honestly, like, if you had morphed somehow Joey onto that, I would have believed it. I would have gone, that's such a Joey sort of performance. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school when I say that, but I just think it was such a good, he was everywhere.
Yeah, he was. I've been a bit of a negative speaker on Trindle and the way that he's playing, but has played over the season. But kudos and credit where it's due. He was a monster, man. Like, those 2 tries and 400 kick meters in the first half was just like, that's incredible. He was so poised, which is unlike the Trindle that I've seen and how I've watched him. And I've watched Trindle with a bit more of a super coach lens, but from what I've seen for what I watched of him on the weekend, he was so poised. He was so controlled. And then when really needed to, he was bloody exciting. Like, it was just, it was incredible to watch. And I'll say this, and I think this segues, for my opinion, into the way Hines played. But I think Hines played quite well based on the fact that Trindle did what he was doing. Hines is not a game manager. Trindle showed that he was the game manager, and that's why he was so poised. That's why I'm saying he was so controlled. Hines then was able to play with his moments and play the moments. And if they can figure that out, that's dangerous. I don't think that's dangerous this week against Penrith. I think they've got no hope. But if they can figure out that partnership and somehow align that, geez, that's a really good halving. That's a really good half show. And it was really nice and refreshing to watch Hines be able to take a breath and be able to play the way that he did.
I know how attackingly brilliant Trindle was. What I want to actually point out is how impressed I was in the second half. I think there was 2 or maybe 3 kicks he put into the in goal were at crucial times where he just got a repeat set and put the pressure back onto the Cowboys, who at the time felt like they were starting to get some momentum, and he just said, "Give me the ball. I'm putting it into the in goal. We're going to have a bit of a 30-second break here, and let's just strangle them a little bit." So I thought that was better for me because the Cowboys were on a run then, and Sharkies were looking a bit dodgy. But then all his brilliance, which was sensational. You mentioned the Hines one. I want to talk to you about what I've seen now at Hines, and I agree with what you're saying. I think he played his role perfectly on the weekend, and that's all anyone's been asking him to do. The issue now for me is that he's not a $1 million 5'8". He's going to completely destroy, and I'm trying to say this respectfully, the Sharks salary cap moving forward, because I know it was one performance, but it's more than one performance. I think Trindle's been pretty good, even in the games that Hines wasn't there. I know Atkinson got a lot of the great publicity for it, but I think if you go back and watch it, Trindle was such a typical halfback in those moments as well. It's an issue because for mine, even though Hines was, he played his role. If I'm being honest, he played the role of about a $200,000 5'8", who just sat back and sort of watched his star halfback, his $1 million halfback, run the show. I don't want to bag him. I don't want to bag him. We keep saying it. I love him. I love what he represents for this team. Loves what he represents for the code. But man, there's some issues there that are going to be at the surface, I think, especially in the off season.
Yeah, maybe in the off season, but most of that list is going to be there again next year, isn't it?
I think all of it.
Yeah. So I don't, and if I remember rightly, and if I had a look at I was looking at the NRL tracker and team list a couple of weeks ago. I think most of those bigger names for the Sharks are at least there for 2 years. So I don't think it's going to be that big of an effect. I mean, yeah, there will be in terms of what they can bring in. But I think the list that they've got is pretty good.
Yeah.
And then just unearth Atkinson, which is huge for them. And Hazleton's had a monster year this year. So he's only going to get better and make that forward pack even better. So yeah, I agree with you though. Like it does look weird. It does look poor that you're 5'8". If they're going to switch the 6 and the 7 is on $1 million, but that's what they've got to play with. So that's the way it's going to be. And they can't adjust that. So it is what it is.
If there any chance of beating Penrith on the weekend, which I don't know if they can or not, they need him to go to another level. There's no denying that. He needs to go to maybe 2 more levels than what he did on the weekend.
Oh, they need the Hines of Dally M year to be able to win that game.
And I know he's busted. I know people keep saying he's come back. I'm over that sort of being an excuse in a way. If you're not right, don't come back. They had Atkinson, who was done a perfect job.
Everyone else has played 27 games and Origin affected games and all sorts of things. Like there'd be no one out there that can say they're 100% healthy.
No, not this time of year.
There's no.
Do you have any other points for this game?
Yeah, look, I've got it. I've got a few, and so I don't know how we're going to talk about this, but I just feel like I'll go back to the Cowboys. I just feel like the Cowboys just had absolutely no answers at any time. And they just couldn't rely on any defensive pressure, and they literally had no plan B. It was all out. This is what's going to happen. Let's give it to our stars and let's go. And there was no plan B. And I think that's a detriment to Todd Payten. And the way that they've been this year in their defensive pressure is atrocious. And particularly their edges, and they're going to have to sort that shit out over the offseason and next year, because what they showed on the weekend was horrible. Now, I'm an advocate for talking about the positives more than why someone plays so poorly. But I want to give you some of these figures. Kennedy, 162. Katoa, 176. Ramian, 130. Iro, 165. Mulatalo, 199. That was 827 meters between that 5 on 98 runs. Like, just a weight of numbers through those edges is just atrocious, man. And that defense is just poor. And that's really got to get fixed, because the way that they played on the weekend, like I don't agree. And I've read a few bits about, and even you said, like, their second half they came out and played. I don't think so. I don't think they played well at all. And I don't have a vendetta against the Cowboys. I really like the Cowboys. I like their club. I like a lot of their players, and a few of them are Storm boys or ex-Storm players. Like, I really have a lot of admiration for them and what they've been able to do and how they go about it. And Reuben Cotter I'm a real big fan of his. But yeah, I fear for their future. And I don't think they've got any glimpses, and that needs to be fixed because that's been all year. That defense that I saw on the weekend's been all year, and that's just. Yeah, their fundamentals just got exposed. Their lack of ability to laterally move. I feel like that was a bit of a B grade, C grade defensive display against. Look, Sharks are an attacking machine. I love it. They are huge, but God, that was atrocious.
No, the way they fell apart is definitely eye-opening, and the fact that that's probably been on the radar, as you said, for majority of this year. And it was their Achilles heel in the end. Something that I feel like most pundits out there could tell and see they weren't able to fix up. And that has to lie on the coach. It has to lie on the coaching staff. And look, it sounds silly to say, but I know James Maloney was more of the attacking side, but how much of that had a bit of a play with him as well? The fact that they lost a member of the coaching staff only weeks out from one of the most important final series or games that they'll have to run into. That has to be probably spoken about as well, because that would not have been an ideal preparation to lose him. And we all know how his character is. He would have been a very notable omission from that playing group and that staff as well. So that wouldn't have helped. Definitely, as I said, that wouldn't have concerned the defensive side of things. But yeah, I think Peyton has some work to do, and I feel like he's always had work to do. I've never been all in on Todd Peyton at the Cowboys. I just feel like there's still something missing there that I don't think he can fix. I feel I liken it to the Brad Arthur situation. I think he's got him to where he can get him to, and that's a finals team. Cool. But the Cowboys don't need that. The Cowboys have had success. The Cowboys need to get back to that team that you can go to the grand final and actually challenge. Can Todd Peyton do that? My answer is no.
No, I agree. And they've got the list. Like, they've
100%.
got the list. Like, they've got the fullback. They've got the wingers. Oh, well, I think they can replace Felt. I think they've got the wingers. They've got the centers. They've got origin dudes all over the park. You've got a hooker in Robson. Their forward pack is much better than middle of the range. Probably no superstars in that forward pack, but no spuds. And they've got depth. Dearden just showed a whole nother level this year, and he's still young. I'm excited to watch him next year, and just watch him evolve into the smarts and the energy that he's got. And it's all backed on the back of a dude named Reuben Cotter. Like, they've got a list. Their list is there, and I agree with you. I think Peyton's reveling in the coattails of what he did in his first year, and has been able to just sort of keep his path there because of that. I think some serious questions need to be asked, and I'll go back to even against the Knights. I don't think they were like we spoke about it last week, how boring not boring. Sorry, that's not the right word we use, but how bad that game was. The skills were not good, and Kalen Ponga rang them ragged, and it was only just some literally superstar moments from a cut from Dearden, and a couple of saves from Val Holmes, and that saved them against the Knights. Plus, then the Knights making their mistakes that got them into this game, and then they've done it again. So the questions have to be asked, and I really hope that is asked in their off season because they've got potential. But yeah, that was really disappointing, and I was really disappointed by that. And then I also want to talk about this, and this was what I picked up on, and then I had a look at the stats because I remember watching this game, and I got to about halfway through it, and I went, I feel like I've seen a lot of errors, and I feel like I've seen no one making any tackles. By the end of the game, so I did some research. By the end of the game, and it's easy to fix, but to find 23 errors and 94 missed tackles combined for the whole game. Now, you tell me.
What's the split? Do you have the split?
No, I didn't write that down. I just looked at the overalls and just went, oh my God. Like the yeah, I just thought that was just poor.
Are you what are you alluding to there? Are you alluding to just the? Are you saying both teams
Yeah.
not good
Yep.
enough,
No,
or
not good enough. Not really not good enough. And so my question is, I wonder if the Sharks played down to the Cowboys and force. You know how you sort of talk about, the good team or good teams playing down to the bad teams in matchups. My question is, I wonder if that's the way it is. If that's what happened. I think the Sharks had good moments, and Trindle was great, and those guys like Mulatalo was a beast, and really showed that. And I think don't downplay the Ramian inclusion in this game as to how much that helped Trindle play on the weekend. But I don't
I'll
think
tell
they
you
were.
the
I don't think they
I'll
were
tell you
great. I don't
I'll
think
tell you
they
the
were great,
breakdown.
and that's a.
Completion
Oh, you go,
completion
sir.
rate for the Sharkies 72%, for the Cowboys 75%, and the missed tackles, Cowboys 52 and Sharkies 44 missed
Oh, it was
tackles.
96. It's even worse than 94.
That's that's the errors. Sharkies 13 errors to Cowboys 12. So Sharkies actually made the more errors. That's not the stats you want heading into a game against the Penrith Panthers either.
And that's where
So
my point was going.
my final question on this game for you: the Sharkies. This sort of just came up then with what you've brought up actually, and I had it in a note, and I've just scrolled past it. The Sharkies' second half performance, is it a concern because they weren't able to put away a team that I know they came back well and they started to play football that we know they can play, but if we're being fair income, you're going into a game against the defending premiers of 3 years now and looking more and more likely it could be a 4, them or perhaps a Storm. It's not, you don't want to take your foot off the accelerator, which is perhaps what they may have done in the second half. I don't think it was a great practice coming into their biggest game since their grand final victory.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Look, it's a great question. Their second half was not great, but they did have 2 disallowed tries, so they
Yeah.
were thereabouts, and they played really well for those disallowed tries. So the way that they were playing in that, I felt for them. And that was the only reason why the Cowboys were still in that game, was because of those 2 disallowed tries, and it just sort of deflated them a little bit. But I don't think they've got any hope against Penrith based off what I just watched there, like that completion rate, the missed tackles. Like I think they can celebrate. I reckon they've gone there over the night. Friday night and over the weekend and had a few too many beers and celebrated and gone, we've broken our 7-year hoodoo, or what is it, 2000? They've broken their hoodoo. They've finally won one. It's back. We did it. We're the final 4. We made the top 4 in the final over the season. Sorry, lost my words there. Sorry. We made the top 4. We're now in the last 4. That's a successful season for us.
Next game was the Sydney Roosters 40 beating the Manly Sea Eagles 16. It was a whitewash. It was an absolute smashing, which basically started within the first 2 tackles. So the first tackle, Jared Hargraves hit up, Mac, Cooler, gone, didn't see him again for the game. Bring on Burbo, Ben Trebojevic came on and just sort of didn't have an impact in the centers, I felt. Second tackle, the second tackle was effectively a false start, which was we had to go back. Went again, and Jake Trebojevic goes out, and he actually manages to come back as well. So they only lost him for that 15-minute HIA period, but the worst start possible for Manly. Two players gone within 20 seconds. Obviously, yes, as I said, one came back. First of all, that first one, did you think there was any issues with the Jared Hargraves motions with his arm, such his elbow? There's been some comments I've seen that have suggested perhaps there is, but personally, I haven't seen it. I've watched it a number of times. Watched it again on 360 tonight. Nothing suggests to me that it was illegal. It looked like it was just natural sort of running style. And if anything, Cooler was a very poor defensive style coming into a big man off the kickoff. Emotions were high. Maybe you just wanted to put a hit on the senior guy and make an example, and he's come off second best.
As most people do against JWH. I think the people are questioning this now. Actually, I'll take a step back. I actually wrote in our little group on Facebook and asked the question. I've seen lots of comment, and my question was: I've seen lots of comments and thoughts on the Hargraves lifting the elbow and leading with the elbow. And I said, I don't see it, but I'm just wanting other people to put their opinion forward. And most of you all came back and said, no, there's no, you've got no issues with it. I then went and watched it a few times, and then purposely went on to 360 this afternoon and watched a couple other little pods and shows just to get an opinion, because I don't know enough about it really, but I don't see anything wrong with it. I think it's just, unfortunately, it's his reputation that's preceding himself there, and people are sitting there saying, oh, someone's got knocked the hell out off of Waweea Hargraves. He must have done something wrong. And I think this one time he hasn't. I can see a little bit though, like he is holding the ball, he's come up, and whilst he's holding the ball, he's trying to take contact. But see, this is the thing that the way that this is now officiated is that a player can't run with the ball under the hand and just run and go chest at someone. Like they have to protect themselves at some point. And if you're going to allow the kickoff and then literally let your big fella start from the end line and run 20 meters and get his head tail, then you've got to give him something to protect himself, as well as you've got to give the defender something to protect himself. So that's the sacrifice we have to live with and make. He has to be able to do. He can't just sit there and go, "Hello guys, let's go. I'm running at you. Like you hit me in the chest. You can do that to me, but I can't hit you." Like that doesn't make sense to me. So I don't see anything wrong with that hit that he had. I don't think he does have a habit of, as he goes to the tackle, he drops the shoulder and goes through. That is something that JWH has a habit of. I don't think he did anything like that. And I think he literally just had the shoulder, the elbow. And I think contact has just pushed it, and he's ended up like naturally just pushed up. And that's about all. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, I think you're absolutely spot on with your description of that. I want to stay on the JWH factor for a second here, because I actually think he completely changes the Roosters outfit as a whole, and he just gives them so much confidence. His influence on this team, I've not seen many front rowers have this sort of impact, and they were a completely different team. I know you can't really compare Manly and Penrith. I know Penrith were at home. They were just a juggernaut, but honestly, Jared Waerea-Hargreaves for this side, he's a monster. He's an absolute monster. Opposition fans obviously hate him. Opposition teams obviously hate to verse him because of some of the things we've just spoken about, how aggressive he can be. But that's what the Roosters love about him, and that's what gives them all an extra feet or two of just confidence. And they just go, you know what, we can do whatever we want. And I've got no doubt in my mind, I know their forwards were so much better, but him and then throwing Radley as well, both being there, both starting, was huge for the Roosters.
Oh yeah, definitely had the mental up when they saw when Radley was a late inclusion, and then any time that you can front up from and watch from behind JWH run and straighten your lineup and literally put a dent into their defense, mate, you're sitting there licking your lips, going, "Hell yeah, I'm ready to go!" Like, and that's just so motivating. Just in finals time, that's just those types of hit ups that he's going to take would just be such a motivating experience for you. I think you look, the thing is, and take this with a bit of grain of salt, because JWH has done this basically his whole career. I think for a period of time, Nas, for probably 2 or 3 years, had that effect on the Storm. I think Taumalolo had a big effect like that on the Cowboys. but for like a short period of time. Whereas JWH has literally done this since the day he started to the day now he's about to leave. So, I think what's telling also is that Spencer Lenu, the mad dog, right? We all know what Spencer Lenu is like, and he's literally just a madman, just with no fear. Literally said that the JWH effect this on the last week of training and what they did, and whether that's just gospel and they want to talk about that, but apparently they went nuts at training on the back of JWH and how he told them all, this is what we're doing. Let's go, and trained basically like they were playing for the weekend. Like that's just the JWH effect, and it's enormous. And I think every club wishes we had someone like that you can sit on the back of. If you have a look at the the high performing clubs over a very long time, they've always had some sort of Meat Eddie type guy that's happy just to take those big hits, take those big tackles, and every now and then cop a sin bin just to wake you all up kind of thing. And we all want them. We all hate playing against them. We all hate watching them as opposing spectators and think how dirty and grubby they are. Oh, mate, I'm a spectator of JBH. He's a grub. He's an absolute grub. But geez, I wish I had him on my team.
The telling factor for me with all this is I remember his last suspension, or might have been the earlier one this year. And in the presser, he was Trent Robinson was asked, "Are you going to sit down with Jared and actually talk to him about things and calm him down?" And I was expecting him to go, "Yep, I'm going to do that." He turned around and basically said to him, "No, that's how he plays. That's how we want him to play, and it comes with their risks, no doubt about it." And I have no doubt in my mind he's going to effectively not play 10 or so games this year. But we need him, and that's probably why they got tremendous depth this year in their front row, so they can afford to not have him there. But now they need him more than ever. He's there, and he's now basically said to the rest of the comp, "This is what I'm going to do. I'm not scared to do it either. So you better be scared." And a lot of them look like they are. So I can't wait for this weekend.
How much is your mouth watering?
Mate, him versus Nelson and Sofa Solomona. I hope the opening kickoff is them two at each other, because I heard the Savo on NRL 360. Everyone else would have heard it. Gordy's let something slip. I don't know if he should have, but apparently they're not the biggest fans of each other. So they've had some issues in the Kiwi camp. They've had some issues, obviously, versus Storm versus Roosters. So the two big dogs are going to go barking this weekend. I've got no doubt about it. We'll say on the Roosters side of things, I want to talk about Sandon Smith. I was calling for his head this last week. I said I don't think he was the guy. He was much better, I thought, on the weekend. We talked about roles with the earlier game and having he played his role, I thought, perfectly on the weekend. If anything, overplayed his price tag, but played his game perfectly to what the Roosters need at the moment when they've got no Sam Walker. And what helped him, I thought, the guy who I wanted to replace him in, Joey Manu, was so much better and probably his best game of the year. And he was not just a center. He was actually floating a fair bit as well. And I thought that was perfect. And that helped his halves out hugely, because it made people worry about another guy that I want to talk about, which we'll talk about after this, their fullback, Teddy. And it made him think about Joey Manu as well. And they were, hang on, I know they got the halves here, which, let's be honest, in what we spoke about in the last week, not too worried about him. We reckon we can handle him. But Manu, Teddy, okay, that's too much attacking flair for us in the middle to concentrate on. So credit to both of them. I thought they both played their roles perfectly and both stood up when they really were needed to.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I don't think anything really. The only thing that Sandon Smith did really well in that game was his try, and that was a nice try. But I think you're right. I don't think he did anything spectacular. I don't think he did anything great. I think he just did okay. But that was the role that he needed to do. And that's what he had to do. And they needed that, and he played that really well. And so, yeah, I agree. Kudos where it's due. He was really good, and he needed to do that. They needed that. He was a lot more of that sort of game manager. Get that first pass, straighten everyone up. That way, then Teddy. That way, then Manu. That way, then Dom Young. That way, then Crichton was able to do the work and the play that they were able to do. So, yeah. So it was nothing spectacular, nothing out of the norm, but he played really well.
Talk about spectacular. Talk to me about James Tedesco, because there was people crucifying this guy at the back end of last year, saying he was past it, pretty much time to retire, on way too much. The Roosters will never re-sign him for what he's on. This year, I think it's one of his best years consistency-wise he's ever played. I am so high on James Tedesco this year. I don't think it's fair any sort of criticism he has copped this year. I think that's people just bagging him from last year's form, not moving on. Goodness me, what a performance.
Oh, he really, like I've written here, Teddy showed that he can carry this team on his back by himself. It's literally the headline. It was just, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I watched, and how bloody good he was. And that was probably the best fullback game I'd seen all year. You know, you got to take everything into account. You know, elimination final. Oh yeah, but you take everything into account. It's an elimination final. They've just got flogged the week before by Penrith. They've had major injuries. Yep, Radley came back. You know, Radley played 20 odd minutes, but Radley was back. JWH was back. You know, the Sam Walker injury. You put everything into account as to what's happened across this year, and that would be one of the best. That is the best performance by a fullback this year. And if he's not named the full, well, actually, I think he did get named, didn't he? Well, he's got the players voted for him as the best, as the number one this year.
No, they voted Edwards.
Did they? No.
Yeah.
Did I see? Oh, I must have read that wrong. Yeah, so that's just silly, because he's been by far and above the best fullback this year. Look, Edwards was really good to start the year off, and that's why Edwards got picked for Origin. And Edwards got picked for Origin because Teddy had a bad year last year. And I agree with what people said, but Jesus, like whatever he did in the offseason and whatever elixir he had to make him with the eternal youth that he's got, he's been great this year. It's been a blessing to watch him. We've been blessed.
It's quite funny. We go on about the new age of fullbacks, the new wave. We're talking Ponga, Walsh. They're all demanding the biggest contracts of the lot. If I was starting a franchise tomorrow for next year, I'll tell you right now, I want James Tedesco as my fullback. I think he's still got it. I think he's still the best out there. I need him. I'm so high on him at the moment. And it's probably because I'm a bit biased on the fact that so many people wrote him off last year and said he's done. And the way he has come back this year is the sign of a true, I'm not even going to say champion. I think he's right up there when we're going to start talking about Hall of Famers in years to come when he retires, obviously, and down the track. That's the sort of level I'm holding him at. I just think he has been phenomenal. And Edwards is there. Edwards is a freak as well. I get that. Ponga's obviously been great this year, but I'm with you. I just think he's been the best fullback this year. And that performance on the weekend has actually given me some confidence for the Roosters on the weekend that they can become more than just a rollover for the Storm. But we'll obviously talk about that in a few days' time. We didn't speak much about Manly last week, and we went off air and we went, you know what? We didn't speak about Manly much. And I think it's kind of funny because now I come into here this week and I go, I don't really have much to talk about with Manly because their performance wasn't great. I don't think anyone really stood out. Normally we came to this like the Cowboys. We had a couple of players who we thought really stood out. I look at this and I didn't think there was anyone really that stood out for Manly. I think there were some question marks. One of them is around Turbo, who I thought just clearly isn't fit, still wasn't fit. Did he make a huge difference this week playing again and playing busted? This week, no. Last week, perhaps he did. He was key for one or two of those moves. This week, against a better opposition, I think they really found him out. There was like a spot there on the edge where he got the ball and he almost made a break up the sideline, and his body just wouldn't let him. I just feel for him watching him at the moment. He needs to go to center. He desperately needs that center move, I feel like. What were your thoughts around Turbo on the weekend, his performance? And I generally just felt bad for him being out there and just felt like he was a passenger. And I was so looking forward to the fullback battle, but Teddy won by a knockout in the first round in probably 10 seconds.
Yeah, I don't think Turbo was as bad as maybe what you've sort of inferred in those comments, but I thought Turbo was okay in context. The whole Manly team was poor, and they were deflated in the first 20 seconds. And that was tough to come back. And I think you can safely say how important Cooler is to them. Because you could literally see the attack and what lack of they had when he went out, and how that line just wasn't straight. How, Burbo defensively is better than Cooler, but Cooler's no scrub in defense either. But Burbo had no offense to talk about. 44% possession rate, so that's pretty low. 64% completion rate, so they didn't even have the ball that much as compared, and they didn't even protect the ball, and couldn't finish their complete, all run meters. They were 1,370 run meters to 1,711. It's almost 400 less meters. So they just had they just couldn't they couldn't keep the ball in their hands. They couldn't do anything with it. 15 errors, and then and put it in perspective, as bad as they were, and look, to be honest, I've got all my notes. I wrote half a page on the Roosters, and I've got 3 lines on Manly. I have nothing really. I didn't have much to say about it. That Manly just looked sore. They just looked tired, and that's exactly how Turbo played. They just looked sore. They looked tired. He looked extra sore. He looked extra tired. But I think he played within himself. I think he played well enough to do it. I just think he just didn't have that finishing power that he's got, that last little line break that he can have, or that line break that he can get through, that, run up the edge speed that he has, that take the tackle and offload. He just didn't have that finesse skill that we know he's got. And I think that was just because his body's done for the year, and it literally, the way he played was exactly how the rest of them played. Sore, tired, round 29 for him. Manly were poor, and Roosters just didn't let him. They just didn't let him play, and literally from the first hitter.
No, I agree. One more person I want to talk to you about with Manly, and I know he's copped some criticism this week. I actually think it's pretty unfair. Ruben Garrick. A lot of places have come out quite harshly, actually, criticising his move to centre, saying he's never established his position this year. I'm not sure what they've watched, because I don't know if the Supercoach side of me maybe giving me a bit of a biased view here, but I actually feel like for majority of the year, he's actually played centre very well for someone who's just transitioning into centre. He's been a winger his whole career. Let's not forget about that. And when he was needed to, he'd be a fullback. This is his first full year at centre. I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as what some people have come out since this game. Yep, he was bad on the weekend, but he was up against a guy called Joey Manu who was in a mood. And we all said, if this guy gets back to that mood that he hasn't been in for some time, good luck. No centre would have been able to contain Joey Manu on the weekend. Majority of the year, Garrick's been, for mine, good. He's been a good centre. He's been in the top half of centres this year for sure. I just think it's pretty unfair.
I think it's incredibly unfair, and I actually thought you might say something about him, because I've been seeing all the all the talk about it too and think it's incredibly harsh. So I brought up his stats. So I'm sorry, I'm just going to reel some stats. So not mine. I'm going to reel these off. He's played in 24 matches this year. So one of the things that I heard this year was about injury prone and Garrick's injury prone. Yeah, okay. There's a couple of them were head knocks that he's missed out in games with, and a couple of those 24 appearances he had to leave early. But that's the day and age that we have now. We have new protocols and rules. But he's still on the park 24 times, 10 tries for a centre. He's also a kicking centre, so he's kicking. So 81 goals at an efficiency rate of 76.4. So that's almost elite in the grand scheme of things. 8 try assists, 12 line breaks, 48 tackle breaks in attack. In defense, 394 tackles made, 66 missed tackles at a tackle efficiency of 85.6. Now, that's not bad. And so all this talk about how bad he is defensively and what he's got, well, the stats don't tell that. They don't tell that story. So maybe there's other stories in terms of the way he lines up or his lateral movement or he's in the wrong spot or whatever, maybe. But I haven't seen that when I've watched Manly, and I've watched a fair bit of it because I am heavily invested in Supercoach. So there's a lot of dudes in that Manly team that I like to, I want to play. So I watch a lot of it. I don't see the poor efficiency rate. So, 123 average running meters. What's wrong with that?
Not many centers do those numbers.
They don't, and not many centers that have an 85.6 tackle efficiency as a defender. They don't. So here, I'll tell you a center that I'll happily swap him, and I freaking love him. But I'll swap Garrick for Meaney. I'll take Garrick over Meaney, and I love Meaney. I love him. And I love the role that he's played in the edge that they've got now. I love him. And yeah, he has his deficiencies, but bloody, I love Meaney. But I'd happily take Garrick over Meaney. Name me 12 centers that are better than Garrick this year.
Couldn't.
You could at least. I think you could get 10, but God, yeah, it's so harsh. And I don't.
But again, with the 10, probably at least 4 or so, I reckon for sure. But then the next 6, I reckon you're talking the same way as people talking about Garrick, where they've had their good games, but they've also had some games where you're like, oh, that was an average sort of game. There hasn't been any centers that consistent. For mine, centers this year has been a real mixed boat. There's been some great guys for a 6-week period. There hasn't been really a dominant center throughout the season. When I go and do my team of the years, center's probably the hardest one because Ramian was up there at the start, but he fell away massively, in my opinion, towards the back end. Val Holmes had a good game here and there, but majority of the year he was well below his normal best. There was a number Bradman Best was good in patches, but he missed a fair chunk of games. Yep. Garrick was very consistent, as you've just said. I just think it's extremely, extremely unwarranted and extremely unfair. And it made me a bit surprised because there is some bigger, I guess, pages out there that ran a few things about him, and I was shocked that they said it because I just didn't think it stood out as much to me. Maybe let us know, messages, comment, or whatever, but maybe we're seeing a completely different game. I didn't think he's been that bad this year. And even on the weekend, his defense, yeah, it was poor against Joey Marnie, but he still tried his ass off. He didn't give up once. He continued to work hard, worked his backside off in attack, made those tough carries. He can't go back to wing. They're not going to drop Saab. They're not going to get rid of Lehigh Hopewati. I don't know what they want to do with him. If they want to get rid of him, Harrow will take him.
Why are you even saying that? He's bloody good, and I don't even reckon anyone in Manly is sitting there saying anything. I think it's just so harsh. Manly just got owned on the weekend, and Garrick wasn't great, but he bloody tried his ass off against it in a game where they got blown out. They got beat 40 to 16. And that's
the biggest question marks in their middles for mine. They got beaten forwards. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. And even that 16 points that Manly put on are pretty lucky to even get them. I just think that they've tried to find a scapegoat out of that team, and Garrick has been that point for that. And they've gone back and gone, yeah, here it is. We'll have a go at Garrick for that big loss and what's happened over the year, and we'll have a go at him. Instead of actually looking at really the story here, and the story around it is, what's going to happen with Turbo. Cooler got injured. and the forwards.
Yeah. Do you have any other talking points on this game?
Nah, just look, full credit to Manly. They got to the last 6 and played well enough to get there. They beat the Bulldogs last week, and deserve to be here. We're both laughing because they beat the Bulldogs last week, and we did not say a thing about them last week in our podcast. But they beat the Bulldogs. They deserve to be here, and they so full credit to them. I thought they did it, but they just look so sore. They look so tired. They were just done. It was a long 29 weeks for them.
I'm laughing about another reason. I'll just quickly tell you why. On social media this weekend, it's after this loss, a number of Bulldogs fans, a number of Bulldogs pages, for some reason, got on the back of this and acted as if it was their team that won the game and was into Manly, like sucked in, blah, blah, blah. Guys, they beat you last week. They knocked you out. So I don't know if you're aware or not, Doggy supporters, or you've been too busy partying, celebrating if you won the comp 6 weeks ago, but they knocked you out of the competition. They're better than you. They're the better team. So get off your high horse, because sorry to break it to you, but you're not up where you think you are at the moment. You're still improving as a club, and credit to you. But I've noticed the last few weeks where the Dogs got a lot of respect from a lot of people in the rugby league world, from just how they worked at the club and how they improved. You're starting to wear thin on that sort of stuff, I can tell you now, because you're now getting back into that old arrogant Bulldogs way where you lost a lot of that respect. And with the Josh Adokar stuff, now with your fans starting to carry on a bit too much, I get it. Support your team. Be passionate. They knocked you out. You don't have anything to say. They knocked you out.
And came back.
I just think it's funny.
They came back. The Manly weren't leading that game. They came back to win the game. So literally unfortunately this is a bit harsh, but just sit down and shut up and enjoy the rugby league. Your team's not in it, you lost. And full credit to Manly, they got here.
100%. That's all we've got time for. I hope you really enjoyed this one. We will be doing a finals week 3, so the 2 big major semi-finals, a preview for that. That'll be on Thursday night, so we'll be releasing that for Friday morning. I'll have it out. Or actually, I might put it straight away Thursday night after we record it. And then, hopefully you guys enjoy that. Bit more in-depth, sort of the way we've been doing the review stuff as well. So thank you. Thanks again, Trav, for being part of this episode. Make sure you hit the like button on the podcast or the YouTube side of things. Give us some support. Share it if you're happy with it. Add some comments in, message the page. Let us know your thoughts as well. Also, let me know what you want to hear from us in the off season. Obviously, there's going to be a bit of a time for a break, but there'll also be some times where we want to give you what you guys want. So whether it's Supercoach related, whether it's footy related, whether it's, we're going to look at doing interview styles as well, just with not just players and stuff, but also ourselves. I'm going to interview all the boys and be a bit of a deep dive into their lives, so you can get to know them a bit better. That'd be a cool idea. So just all that sort of stuff. Let us know what you guys want, and we'll always want to improve and better ourselves for you guys. But Trav, thank you. Hope you've had a great hour with me.
Loved it. Go Swannies. Go Storm this weekend too.
The double in Melbourne. Thank you, guys. Enjoy. Go the Eels 2020.